Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast, career advice from people in the business. This week, I spoke to writer-director Clive Tonge about his horror movie, Mara. The movie is about sleep paralysis and stars Olga Kurylenko. It had a budget of 5 million, so this was an interesting chat with somebody about low-budget film production. Clive gave me some great war stories about that production. He talked about working with actors, getting the feature film off the ground in the first place, and some tips for you to do the same. Enjoy. So I was going to start by asking you, I looked at your IMDb profile. You've got a couple of short films on there, and then Wallop, you do a 5 million horror feature, essentially as your debut feature. How did that come about, and how do you go from shorts to immediately what I guess is classified as low budget?
Yeah, well, immediately, I wouldn't use the word immediately. It was a long, painful process. But yeah, so I did. I think, I mean, if I was going to advise anybody going into the industry, I can only tell you my way in, really. And that kind of worked to a degree. And that's to keep making shorts, but aim them at festivals and awards. I think making shorts is great for your practice. You know, you'll always get better the more shorts you make. Getting them at festivals is really what you want, and getting them to win awards is absolutely what you want. So, you know, I tell my students, if you get a good degree, that's great, but that's not going to get you a job. If you get an award-winning short and a great-looking show reel alongside a good degree, I think there's very little more you could do to kind of help your career. So, yeah, so I made a bunch of shorts that either went to festivals or won awards. So that sort of got the attention of people in the industry who I'd kind of networked with and got to know over the years. But then there was a big long gap between kind of, I'm done making shorts now, I want to do something bigger, to actually making something bigger. And Mara was the thing. And me and my sort of co-writing friend Jonathan Frank wrote Mara. It took, I would say, about 7 years to get it right. And that was 7 years of depression. Nothing's going to happen. All kinds of ups and downs went on. In the middle of that, I realized I didn't have a horror film on my shorts, my list of shorts. So I made a little horror film at my house called Sunday Best. But I think the main thing that I had, and the main thing that people need, is it's this relentless tenacity, this belief. I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep trying. Try to enjoy the process. Try and ride the ups and downs, because they're going to come. I always thought the film industry, I compare it to it's like a giant pendulum that swings towards you and away from you. Just as it gets towards you and you're about to grab it, it swings away back into the darkness again, gets you to the lowest point where you just think, that's it, I'm done. And then suddenly out it swings back again. And really, that was it. It was just this relentless desire to get something made. Do you know what I mean? To kind of prove my detractors wrong. Something inside me wanted to do it. I wanted to have, make something that had cultural impact. I loved the filmmaking process from the shorts. I mean, I started out playing in bands and playing music. Then that sort of, and then I did a bit of photography for bands and a bit poster design. And I kind of found out through animation and filmmaking that I could take all the things that I liked and put them together. So I always enjoyed a bit of writing, but I didn't know what to write. So then I got into script writing. Always enjoyed a bit of photography and filmmaking, so I could use that in it. So yeah, I always enjoyed the music, so I did a bit of sound design. So in those 7 years of getting Mara together, I was doing lots of other little things here and there, music videos, just locally, nothing major or nationally. Then, suddenly after all those 7 years, you get a green light, and it's like, even that moment, even though it's like a massive high five, amazing moment, you go, yes, it's greenlit, we're there. And then like 30 seconds later, you're like, oh shit, I've got to make a film now. Oh God, you know, and then another form of stress comes in.
Yeah. And what would you say the key was? Obviously, patience sounds very important in that process, but what was the key to getting that green light apart from perseverance? Was it connecting with the right person? How did that unfold for you?
Well, for the first thing is it's the script. It's got to be good. It's got to have something else. I think it's got to have. I mean, they always call it a reach out to the audience. So what our reach out in the script was sleep paralysis. There was no at the time. We saw a documentary about this thing, sleep paralysis, and people see this skinny hag, and they sort of said lots of people have this. 40% of the population have it. So we suddenly thought, well, if people watch this, 40% of people in the cinema will go, I've had that, and they'll start talking about it. So that became a kind of a selling point. That also worked in the various pitches we did over the years when somebody on the panel would say, I have that, and it's terrifying. So that gave it legs, if you like, that gave it that reach out. Then basically, I think in terms of people with money, who can get films made, it's a kind of who you know situation. I just happened to know he was like a young up and coming director and producer who went on to bigger and better things, and he always stuck by me as a filmmaker and kind of was always involved with the project. That's a guy called Scott Mann, who I owe a great debt to. But I only met him through networking. So he ran a short film scheme in the Northeast. We all submitted short films to it, and mine did pretty well out of that. So that kept us in touch. He went away and made his first feature and all this kind of stuff, whilst we were in the background developing Mara. So I think, if you're helming a project, you've got to have a good idea, and you've got to be good at people, good in a room, a people person. You've got to persuade people that this is a good idea, which is not an easy task.
No, it's not. And how do you do that what would be your tips for doing that without coming across desperate? Because obviously you're 5 or 6 years into pitching that project. How do you pitch without it seeming like this is the last hope for this thing that you want to get made?
Right. First of all, it's confidence. When you've worked on an idea for that long and you keep getting feedback that it's great, but it's not quite right, that does give you the confidence that you're onto something. Having that reach out potential, that was a big selling point. We knew this could be a scary film, but it's also, this is not ghosts or anything like that. This is, if you go down any street in any country in the world and knock on all the doors, somebody on that street will have experienced this. And that was astounding to us, that nobody had done a horror movie like that. And I mean, the only one that came near was kind of Freddy Krueger. But they did it in a very different way to us. We wanted to sort of ground this one more in the, if you like, the reality of what sleep paralysis really is. How do you come across as not desperate? I think it's just the self-belief that this has got something. Do you know what I mean? As a total horror movie fan, this is something I would be really interested to watch. And other things happen, other random things kind of. In the process of writing this, I found out that both my parents had sleep paralysis.
Oh, really?
my brother had it.
But
nobody talks about it because they don't want to sound like they're insane. My mum said it was like a ball of bees started at her feet and slowly travelled up her body until it got to her head, and then she burst awake. And the more those stories came in, the more confident we got with the idea that we weren't trying to desperately make up a monster. We were like, this is real. You look at any culture in the world and they've got a sleep paralysis monster.
Yeah. So in a way, it's not like an existing IP, which is what people love at the moment, isn't it? Oh, we'll grab that book, we'll grab this. You've latched onto like an existing fear that people haven't really unlocked yet, and kind of use that as a way to connect with people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's real. It's not ghosts. You know, we spoke to academics. We went to a sleep clinic, talked to them, and there was a guy, I can't remember his name now, a Canadian expert, but he got several books on sleep paralysis, where what he'd done is just collected people's experiences. And even him, as a hardcore scientist, said, you know, if you, Jim, see a skinny old hag coming into your room, and somebody in Japan sees the same skinny old hag, who am I to say that this is not supernatural? We do not know what this is.
Yeah.
So the confidence came from the fact that we'd found something very unique to make as a horror film. Sure. Having said that, there is a big problem with it, which is why it took so long to write, I think. And the big problem was, if you think about Freddy Krueger and their kind of version of sleep paralysis, you kind of went into the dream world. So you could have all the traditional horror things. There's a monster chasing you through corridors. In actual fact, you know, somebody who's in the depths of sleep paralysis, having the worst nightmare ordeal of their life, actually, if you were stood in the room, they're just like this on a bed.
Yeah.
And it's literally the least cinematic thing possible. So we couldn't have chases, we couldn't have those kind of things. So finding ways around that proved difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you did a great job. I mean, it with the sound and the creature itself, really holding back seeing what that is, which is obviously a good tip for any horror filmmaker, is to hold that back as long as you can. So yeah, I think it worked really well. It's obviously had an effect on lots of people. Going back to logistics, so you've finally found someone, you've got your project greenlit. What happens next? Did you obviously you had to sign a contract and say, right, we're going to go make this with you guys. Did you then get someone legal involved? Did you do all that yourself? How did that work?
No, because I was a first-time director.
Yeah.
Really, on the team, I was the weakest link. There was a lot of fighting, sort of, you know, investors saying, well, we've got a guy over here who's done 4 other horror films. Well, let's get a safe pair of hands. But luckily, my team kind of stuck by me, and all that kind of thing. So basically, the bigger Hollywood people, their attitude was keep Clive out of everything as much as possible.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. My basic instruction was, don't F it up.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to keep me out of, and to be honest, I wouldn't have a clue about any of that kind of all that legal kind of talk. I know that it went through a lot of trouble with casting, but I mean, casting it's never not a nightmare, really. At student level to professional level, people came and went, and had dinner with various different cast members, and they said yes and then said no, and schedules, you know, got better offers than ours and all that kind of thing. But obviously, investors want the biggest star they can get, even though we were at the kind of the lower budget end of things. So, but eventually it came down to Olga Kurylenko. She kind of signed on at first, then got a better offer and left, and we had a few years in the doldrums. Then it came back round again, and then she agreed to that. And much to their horror, she said, right, I'm ready to sign. I just want to speak to the director. And they were like, oh my God, we're dead, you know. And of course, their nerves transferred to me. So I was nervous. And then I just thought, you know, they're just people in the end. They're only other people. You know what I mean? They're not alien beings or anything like so. So I just chatted just chatting regularly, like we're chatting now, just talking about what the vision for the film was and all that kind of thing. Yeah, and she signed on. She signed on then. Wow. So yeah, all the legally stuff, all that was not my department. Mine was just how to make the film look and all that kind of thing.
Sure. And did you, I guess, when you signed on the dotted line, was your attitude, right, I'm going to get this made? I guess what I'm getting at here is, if should someone find themselves in the position you were in, is there anything they need to look out for in that process, just as they're signing up to the project, that could really be a pain in the bum later on?
I think never get your hopes up until the ink's dried.
Yeah.
Yeah, get used to the word no. Is this what you're getting at, Jim?
Well, I guess I'm more thinking, so for example, when we sell a film, there are certain things within that contract. If I was selling it to a distributor, I would be looking out for. I'd be going, well, I don't want to, if they say this, I'm not having that, because that means later on this is going to happen. So I guess as a director, is there, and obviously with a writer, you might have provisions in about rewrites, stuff like that. Is there anything as a director that you were particularly looked out for, or that you maybe regret not looking out for early on?
I think as a first-time director dealing with Hollywood execs, I think just go for it. However, they're going to fuck you over. There's no two ways about it. You don't have complete creative control. Just go with it. You know how it's incredibly lucky if you get to direct a feature, especially with a few $1 million thrown at it. You've just got to take it first time round, definitely. So yeah, because again, as a first time director, you're instantly replaceable. On set was really like hardcore for me. I almost got PTSD from it.
Really?
Because there were 16 producers, and there was always about 7 of them waiting in the wings, waiting for me to mess up or to not make my days, so that I could be replaced instantly. So it was a high pressure environment that nearly sent me nuts. But I keep coming back to that. You're making a film here. Walking the streets. I was walking the streets with a check in my pocket for part of my payment, and I'm thinking they didn't provide. I didn't have a car at the time, so I had to walk about 2 miles to a bank. And at first, I was like, I can't believe I'm directing a film. I'm going to walk to the bank. And about halfway down the walk, it's like I'm walking the streets of LA with a check in my pocket. I made a film. Not many people get to do that. So I think if you go the America Hollywood kind of route, you're going to get screwed over. There's no two ways about it. I got screwed over many times in many departments, but I got to make my film, and I still appreciate the opportunity that I had there. So I think if you start to get too picky over contract details, you're going to lose your opportunity.
Sure.
Now, obviously, that would be different if it was a low budget film set in the UK, or if it was, a different type of film. Which, to be honest, Jim, is what I'd like to do next. I kind of got my fingers a little bit burned with the Hollywood set. I'd like to do something a bit smaller, make the budget stretch in different ways. I'd like to do that next.
Yeah. So the takeaway from that, I guess, is if you find yourself in that fortunate position, don't cause too many waves, because they'll just get rid of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And be prepared to put up with a lot of sort of interference. But you will get through it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, because now once you do that, you've got a film on your CV, and everything I learned about filmmaking my entire life, I kind of learned more on that shoot than all those other years. But without those other years behind me, I would have never made it to the shoot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a perseverance. It's that type of game, really. And it's up to you as a filmmaker to decide what are you going to do in those years? You know, you could go and flip burgers at McDonald's to pay the rent, keep trying, or you can make short, or you can go be part of a film crew, go study for a degree. You know, there's lots of things you can do, but don't be deluded that. A lot of people think a director swans in with a long scarf, with a cheroot cigarette, and gives out orders. It's very much not like that. I compared it to, for me, it's like the opening of Saving Private Ryan. That's what it was like. It's here's your film. Great, here's your house. You can stay here. All good. Okay, the first day of the shooting, it's like, yeah. And I wasn't fully prepared for that when it first started, you know.
Yeah. What about any advice for dealing with actors, directing actors?
I think casting, even though it's really difficult, is everything really. So somebody like Olga, who's, you know, a seasoned professional, do a very little I need to give her in the way of notes, just odd little tweaks here and there. The kind of the smaller or the first time actors, they needed a bit more time. And yeah, I think you just have to be, again, it's that people person reading. So, you know, one of the actors was really nervous, really scared. And he came in just like me. He came in sort of thinking, oh, great, I've got my first movie. Then it was like, go stand there. We're going to do it. You know what I mean? So I thought, I need to spend time with this guy, you know. Luckily, his nerves fed into the scene. He needed to be nervous. So I was like, this is good. Don't lose your nerves, you know. And then kind of specific notes, as specific actionable notes. So not going, you know, once more with feeling, or can you make it a bit more this or that. Like one of the notes I gave to one of the actors that I thought worked well was, this character was saying, you know, in Japan it's called Kanishibari, in Canada it's the old hag, and over here it's called Mara. I feel like the little moment when he said it's called Mara was lost a bit. So my note was, this is a trailer moment. This is going to be in the trailer. So then it can go, and over here it's Mara. Do you know what I mean? And it was just little things like that. It's not, you know, I'm not an actor, and I don't understand in depth their process, but I've got to see what it looks like on the surface. Do you know what I mean? And so I think it's spending time with them as people, you know, becoming friends, becoming someone they can trust, and you can discuss ideas with them. I think it's all about that people person thing. You know, I was very much not a camera person. I'm not technical at all. So I didn't really go near. There was a few camera things that I wanted. My time was spent with the cast. We had a little girl in the cast, so I spent a lot of time, you know, fooling around with her, just getting her to feel comfortable. But again, it's hard to give one piece of generic advice, because every actor, like every person, is different. You know, if you see they're nervous and scared, you've got to deal with that a certain way, and if they're being super confident and too confident, you've got to deal with that another way. So it's trial and error.
Yeah.
But the way to get round that is to do it lots of time. It's the only way to learn, really.
And so you now teach film and video?
Yeah.
So having worked with students, what do you think? Well, this is going to be a tough one for you to answer, because I'm asking you what you're not teaching them. But what do you think universities and colleges aren't able to teach students that they need out in the real world?
I think having done that feature, it gives me a lot more kind of material and understanding of what teaching film is. I can't say I've cracked the code of it yet, because I think in the end it's all about practice. So I always liken it to playing a piano. I can show you some scales to practice, but you've got to go out and practice those scales. And until people have done, for example, 3-point lighting, till they've done it 100 times, I don't think they're going to get it. They might understand how you do it, but until you've done it, it's not going to work. So I try to encourage them to practice outside of class. But making a film isn't just a load of beautiful shots strung together. It's actually a story. So if your story was, you're a handsome womanizer, you might like that differently to if you've just been bitten by a vampire, or you're a serial killer. So the tools, the grammar of film, the lighting, the lens choices, all that has to come from the script and the scene within the script. And that to me is really hard to teach, because again, it's a matter of practice. So we do some of this. How would you like for an interview, and how would you like for different things? But it's really hard in 3 short years to get everything you need to know. But I would say by far the most overlooked part in teaching film, the most overlooked part is to fully develop the script. Without a fully developed script, that's the DNA for the film. If that DNA is faulty, everything that grows from it will magnify those faults. By the time you're shooting the scenes, it'll almost be deadly to the film. So a lot of students come to university, they can't wait to get out shooting and pressing record, and it's a really difficult balance to say it's not ready yet 1,000 times. It's not ready yet. It's not ready. Like, what's going on? So it's just trying to impress that upon them, really.
Yeah. So you've made your film, you've got it into some festivals. So say, I think you were in Fright Fest, for example. You're doing PR on it, getting interviewed about it. That can potentially be quite daunting. I'm never good in an interview. Any tips for that, for talking about your film and for kind of making sure the journalist gets the hook for it, all that kind of stuff?
So yeah, I think, because if you're talking about Mara, the feature, because it had taken up 7 or 8 years of my life, I'd done 100 pitches and 100 interviews, so I was kind of got used to that. But I think it comes down to one word, and this again goes back to the students, and it's confidence. It's all about confidence, and even if you're not quite confident, it's about faking the confidence. I think interviews and press, if you appear nervous or stumbling and bumbling, it's not going to play well. But you will bumble and stumble for the first few interviews that you do, because nobody's used to it. I now talk to people for a living, so I'm quite confident, and I'm quite confident to bumble and stumble and say I don't know the answer to that. But yeah, at the end of if you go from blank page to finished film and festival success, whether that be short or feature, you'll have gone through a process that will give you the confidence to answer the questions. If you're thinking about answering questions now at the start of your project, you're going to be underconfident, because I haven't got anything to talk about, so I'm just sort of blagging and bragging about something that I haven't done yet. But yeah, confidence only comes through experience, and I think the way creative endeavors kind of run is you start by collecting information. So that's YouTube videos, books, watching films, and a lot of filmmakers get stuck there. But I think the important next step is to put that information into practice, and you do that repeatedly. You 3-point light interviews for a year long, as many as you can. Once you've done that, then you've got knowledge that came from experience. then you put that knowledge into practice. And if you can do that over a load of years, then you become a sort of a master of your art, and then you can sort of pass it on to others. So just keep doing. I can't really emphasize enough how important that is. You know, if I could write a bullet point PowerPoint presentation of this is how you do an interview, this is how you make a film, I'd be a rich man. But it's not. It's definitely a marathon, and it's not a sprint. It's a slog, really.
For more advice, tips, tricks, hints, all sorts from people who are in the business and who are working right now, please do subscribe to the Honest Filmmaker podcast.